Hey everyone, it's Rob Stanley with the ecommerce podcast. And today my guest is Emma Schermer Tamir. She's founder of Marketing by Emma. Hi, Emma.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for being on our show. So we have a really special one today. And sometimes I feel like it's not addressed enough for people who sell, not just on Amazon, but on the internet. And that is really kind of finding out who your target audience is. And today we want to kind of go over like maybe some ways that you could make some adjustments to understand your target audience and also maybe shape your product or your listing to make sure it goes to that correct audience, which in reality should make more sales, right, Emma?
Definitely. I think when we are thinking about traditional retail, you have the ability to interact directly with your customers face to face. And we forget about how much information you're getting from those face to face encounters that you're missing out on when you're doing things online. And so if you're not making that extra effort to make sure you're having that information, then the types of interactions that you're having with your customers are not going to be as impactful as they could be otherwise.
Yeah, we were talking earlier and I was kind of asking her, people that sell on Amazon, you don't necessarily have access to some of the statistics or stats that you see, let's say on like a Shopify or a web page you own yourself. So what is kind of some of the ways that you deal with kind of figuring out what the person's target audience is if you can't get necessarily analytics?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that particularly Amazon sellers love numbers. And so they always want to go to those analytics. And so if those analytics aren't available or if they don't tell a full picture, then you're a little bit like, what do I do? And you can do actually a lot of great work without needing any analytics at all. So the first step is something as simple as looking at who your top competitors are, and then looking at the types of reviews that people are leaving and seeing how are they talking about this product? What other products are they talking about within their reviews? Even if it's something as basic as an office chair, maybe everybody that's writing about this office chair is saying how much they love it paired with this particular type of desk. And so then you start to get a little bit more information and a little bit more information. And so then you can take that search off of Amazon, going to places like Google and seeing, okay, how are they marketing this product? Who is the kind of person that would be attracted to these things? Because if a desk is talking about what materials they're using and the craftsmanship that goes into it, that's going to attract a very different type of customer than somebody that's really wanting the ergonomics of a desk and maybe that functionality of being able to transition between a sit to stand desk. So that's starting to give you even a little bit more insight. And then you can take it a step further and think, okay, who are the influencers out there that might be associated with products like this? And who would be the kind of people that are interested in following or engaging with these kind of people? So all those little steps along the way are starting to give you a larger picture of the specific world that your customers are living in. And then some of that will be naturally dictated by the product itself. So if you're selling a baby product, for example, then you know that it's either going to be a parent or a grandparent or a caretaker in some way, I guess, or a friend that's buying a product from somebody's registry. But the original kind of customer of that was the person that registered for that product in the first place, who is a parent. So thinking about all of those things will help to begin to inform what are your customers thinking about, not just when it comes to your product specifically, but more generally about the types of information that they are consuming, the other products that they're purchasing, the lives that they're living.
Yeah, and you brought up a great tip there too that I know we've discussed on the podcast before, but I want to, just kind of remind everyone. Emma brought up a point that you need to take a look at what are other people buying when they're buying your item. So, take that chair as or the chair and then the desk, right? So maybe that's a great idea is to keep an eye on what people are buying, either with your product or beside your product. And maybe that's now your next category you go into, right? Maybe they're kind of helping you out or go look at your competitors and see what are people buying. And maybe, that's another category you can jump into. If somebody buys a chair, they might need a desk. If somebody buys a desk, they might need a chair. So that's a great example. And then one thing we were kind of talking about was a lot of times we get a lot of these Amazon sellers, they just sell on Amazon. What do you see is the next sort of step, let's say, away from Amazon? Where do they go and where do they start possibly selling their items, or, look at as another revenue source?
So that's something that you would want to be thinking about depending upon what your product is in particular. So some products may be a great fit for more traditional retail. Some products could find a lot of opportunity in some of those more specialty types of marketplaces that would be well suited to, a babies only type of site. But then maybe even looking and seeing, okay, what are the top registry companies that current parents are using when they're preparing for their baby showers? Maybe it's something that you've never even heard about because you're either not yet a parent or you were a parent, you had babies 10 years ago, and registries have changed a lot since then. So in that same way that you're doing your research about your customers, you can also do research about what other opportunities may exist out there. But regardless of what other channels you might be interested in selling in, it's really important to also have your own website, at the very least, a basic landing page that people can understand that you are a real business and not just some scammer selling on Amazon. I think that it's been shown even more increasingly with time that customers in the past may not have even realized that they weren't buying directly from Amazon when they were buying a product. They didn't know that there were such thing as third-party sellers. But now there are lots of stories that have come out in many of the large publications about problems with counterfeit goods, about problems with products that are not meeting the proper safety certifications. And so all of those elements are making customers a little bit more weary and wanting to do some of that extra legwork. And so if you don't have any presence online, then you may not seem as trustworthy as you would want to seem. Or alternatively, maybe then the only information that's going to be popping up are things that other people have written about you. Whereas if you had a website and some social media pages, then you'd be able to make sure that you're appearing higher up on the search results.
Yeah. And then just to kind of loop back around to, we were talking about finding your target audience. Once you found, or let's say you get kind of a basic of that target audience that's buying your product, how do you use that information, let's say, for packaging, and should you?
Yeah, you should use it for all of the decisions that you're making with your company, because ultimately you're in business, at least in part, to serve your customers. And so all of those choices that you're making are going to be choices that are impacting whether those people will want to be your customer or not. So let's take it back to this idea of selling a baby product. And you have identified that your target audience is really millennial parents. And these millennial parents are different than their parents' generation. They care about things like even distribution of responsibilities between genders, but they also care about making sure that those traditional gender stereotyped colors and everything are not necessarily being passed down to their children. And so whereas if you were just thinking automatically about what people would expect to see when it comes to not only colors of your packaging, but even colors of your product, you may think pastel pinks and blues. However, you may want to rethink that to be more inclusive and really resonating with your customers by using yellows, grays, greens, or just a whole variety of colors, so people don't feel like it's this really binary product that is outdated and more suitable for their parents' generation.
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of also look at it as you need to have a really good packaging. How many times, back in the day when we were all selling on Amazon and a lot of people were selling, the same item, let's say, everybody's just shoving them in brown boxes and putting a label on them. But how important is it now to have, a box that stands out? And I kind of see it in my head as, kind of value add there, right? When I get a box from a customer and it looks almost retail packaging, I feel more like, oh, wow, this is a bit higher class or a bit better quality than somebody who shoved it in a brown box. And that may not always be the truth, but it's just that perceived value of it being in sort of a retail box or a nice box that has images on it. Have you kind of seen that also with some of your customers?
Yes, definitely. A lot of times, because people are selling such similar products, all of your marketing is really one of your main opportunities for differentiation from your competitors. And so something like your packaging, you have to think about the fact that, yes, somebody's already made a purchasing decision, but first of all, you're not guaranteed that they're going to keep your product. So you want to do as much as you can after that purchase has been made to ensure that this is a good fit and that they're going to be excited about keeping that product. But also, ideally, you want to be creating some relationship with your customers so that they don't just say, oh, I don't know, I got it on Amazon. They say, oh yeah, it's this brand and I bought it on Amazon and they're great and you should definitely check them out. So suddenly you go from, oh, I don't know, just search Bluetooth headset on Amazon to saying, yeah, you need to get this brand because it was so great. And so, you make your purchase as a customer and you probably sometimes even forget what you purchased. And so by the time the product arrives, if it's just in some generic packaging, you're probably never really going to remember what the name of that brand was. But if it comes and it's in a really nice box, and maybe you even keep the box for a few days because you want to make sure that it's good and you're not going to send it back. So you're seeing that brand name in your office or on your kitchen table or wherever you would keep something like that repeatedly, then even if you do end up sending it back, it's now a little bit more seared into your customers' minds. And if they liked your brand, but it just wasn't a good fit, then maybe they'll even go online and see if you have another product that would be better suited to them. Maybe the way that it fit into your ears, if we're talking about Bluetooth headsets, they have really small ears. And so they hope that you have an extra small version that they can find and buy because they thought it sounded great. Whereas if you hadn't created that experience, they're just going to go back on Amazon, type in ear, headset for tiny ears, and your brand may or may not appear one way or the other.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like consumable wise. Okay. If I buy something and it shows up and let's say it comes with 2 AAA batteries, right? A remote or something like that. And it comes with 2 AAA batteries. Now, let's say those 2 AAA batteries have the company name that matches the company of the remote. Okay. Soon as those batteries go dead, okay, most people have batteries in the house, but let's just say that I pull those batteries out and I need some batteries. I look at the battery and it has a brand name on them. I might look it up. I might go on Google and look up and see replacement batteries. Now, it might work better if they're more specific batteries, right? AAAs are pretty common, but let's say it's like those coin cell batteries. Not everybody has those coin cell batteries necessarily in their house. And yes, they're available, but that might be something that if it has a brand on it, you could look it up and go maybe buy it from their website. And what Emma's talking about is you can use different ways to do this, that they're either going to go look up and talk about your company, or go look up and read more about your company. Or as they're at your website, they may look at what other items are you selling and maybe purchase from you. So that's great. And so speaking of that, and we were talking a bit earlier about this also, is, we were kind of saying like a lot of people, not just when they go to Amazon, when they go to even to a website, like does what you write on your listing even matter anymore? Like you and I were kind of laughing and we're like, well, does it? I mean, a lot of people show up and they literally like look at the title. I mean, I don't get past an image and a title anymore. And I'm sure you're probably the same way. So, does descriptions matter anymore, Emma?
It's really interesting that you say that. Well, first of all, I'm probably not the best person to ask whether I read because I'm taking pictures of my beef jerky packaging if I think it has something funny and I want to show it to my team or just have it as a archive of clever marketing writing. So, and I was even doing that as a kid. I was the one that read the cereal box front to back 20 times because I was bored while I was eating my Frosted Flakes or whatever.
Okay, so besides you, when you're consulting with customers with clients.
Right, yes. So anyway, the assumption would be that probably not a lot of people are reading. However, there's actually a lot of evidence even that we have to suggest that that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
For example, we have a client that we just spoke to last week, actually. He was getting ready to close his Amazon business. He was going to say, this isn't working for me. I'm converting at 4 point something %. It's terrible. I'm losing money. I don't know what to do. And so sort of as a Hail Mary, he came to us back in the fall, and the only thing we did was rewrite his listing. He didn't even he wasn't brand registered, so there was no A+. It was just rewriting the title, the bullets, and the description. And he went from converting from 4 point something % to, I believe, 26 to 28% conversion rate. So
Wow.
that's huge. And something important to think about in particular is the products that you're selling. So I would say that writing matters regardless of what you're selling, but writing matters even more if you're selling products that require a higher level of trust from your customers. So something like a really simple kitchen gadget may not be as important. You still don't want to have typos. You still want to make sure that everything's written well, because you also need to think about, going back to that idea of who your customers are. So you have a really clear idea of who are a few of your target dream customers, but then within that, you also have different types of shoppers. So you have the people that, like you, they look at a picture, they look at the title, they say, okay, the price is all right, the reviews are pretty good. I don't want to waste any more time doing this.
Yeah, I might hit the bullet points. That's about maybe the extent of it, but having to scroll down the page and read a lot of description, I'm usually, you either got me or you don't. So
right. So there are a lot of shoppers like that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of shoppers that are somewhere in between where they have some specific criteria they need. And so it's not that they necessarily want to read everything, but they need to make sure that the product checks all of those boxes. And so they are going to need to dig a little bit deeper to make sure that they're not purchasing something that they're just going to have to send right back to return. And then you have the third, if you want to just categorize them really simply, and they're the people that are going to look at your listing from top to bottom. They're going to read every single review. They're going to look at all of your photos. They're going to go search you on social media and on Google and all these places, because they want to be sure that before they ever purchase anything, that they're really certain that it's the exact right product for them. And so you want to make sure that regardless of how somebody is shopping, that you're going to be connecting with them. And so those people that are really in depth with their product research are going to be very turned off if you're being sloppy with your listing. And we're probably all of that intense shopper in certain times. Typically it would be for when we have a really specific need for something or a particular passion. And so all of those little details matter a lot more. So you want to be making sure that regardless of the type of person that is shopping, you are connecting with them.
Absolutely.
And then even more so when you're selling something like a supplement, when you're selling anything topical, when you're selling something that may even be a cheap product, but is working with something expensive like your computer, then you need to reassure customers that this is a trustworthy product. And so then all of those elements become even more important. Because if you have even just a small typo, and that's not even talking about the quality of the marketing writing, and you're asking somebody to put that into their body, I'm probably going to be a little bit hesitant about that. If you're telling me that this is the most premium turmeric ever, but I saw that Netflix documentary that was talking about how a lot of the turmeric powder actually was laced with lead, then I may not be so trusting of your high quality turmeric powder if you don't even know how to spell turmeric correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really true. And actually, I had Tim Jordan on a few episodes ago, and Tim did a whole thing just talking about using Grammarly. It's free. Yeah. Just install it. It's like, it's not that hard. It'll pick up mistakes, yes. And then I know you and we're both friends with the PickFu guys. And so PickFu, if anybody's listening is not knowing, and you should by now, because I mentioned it several times on the show, doing A/B testing. You can do A/B testing on titles, A/B testing on images. So definitely that's somebody you want to use also. But yeah, Grammarly for those mistakes. I see it all the time. We have writers write articles for us, or I get guest blog articles. you don't even know how many times I've had to fix guest articles, and I am absolutely terrible at writing articles. So Grammarly is awesome. So take a look at that.
Yeah.
And then I did miss actually one question I wanted to ask you when we were kind of talking about the whole, people going to, like, let's say Shopify to start a website. What about, is it still kind of relevant to show up on Google searches? Like, once you created a website, is that still kind of a thing? Or are a lot of people still just kind of just go straight to Amazon and start selling, and then, getting a second website kind of secondary, and then getting on Google even less than that?
Your presence on Google is something that you should be working to establish as soon as possible. First of all, a lot of times when you're starting your business, you may not really know where you want to go with it, but you want to make sure that you have a strong presence, so that, let's say you eventually realize that you would like to exit your business, and you're much more likely to command a sum of money that you'll be really excited about if you don't just have a random assortment of products on Amazon that make no sense. And so that's where this idea of having a clear brand comes in, but also making sure that you have done the work to establish yourself beyond just Amazon. So having a page like Shopify, and making sure that you are creating content, and you're doing all of those different things that you need to do to make sure that you're not only popping up when somebody searches your brand name, but they may also be making other types of queries that would direct them eventually to your brand. I mean, that's just a great way to help to build your additional revenue. But what people oftentimes, when they're thinking about creating that presence off of Amazon, something that I think is really interesting to consider is that even when you start to expand beyond Amazon, or let's say that you are even a larger brand and you already have a strong presence off of Amazon, and so you say, okay, well, what's the point of really taking the time to invest in Amazon? But whether you like it or not, because Amazon is such a strong site, most likely your Amazon listings are going to be appearing on the first page of Google. And so you want to be thinking about how that's going both ways, so that even if somebody's looking at your website first, they may also go to Amazon to see, to price check, to see what people are saying, because obviously most customers are going to assume that the reviews will be a little bit more even on Amazon, as opposed to your own site, where you're just going to try to make yourself sound as good as possible. So a lot of people would trust the reviews that they see on Amazon, even if they will ultimately choose to purchase on your website. And so you want to make sure that you're having not only that presence everywhere, but that also, regardless of where people are going, they're getting a cohesive and consistent message. So they don't look at your Amazon listing and get one idea of what your product or who your brand is, and then get something totally different when they go to your website. And that's actually really common. I think part of that is because people kind of just slap things up, and then they're maybe not going back and reviewing and revising, or they think, okay, well, this should sound like this, and this should sound like this. Or Amazon, all that you need to do is make sure that you have keywords, and the writing doesn't matter. But if you have your own website, then the writing does matter. And in the same way that just on your listing itself, it can have a big impact, as I mentioned. The same is true for making sure that there's that cohesive tone throughout. And that all really starts with having a very clear idea of who your customers are, and always keeping them front and center. Because when you are just writing about this ambiguous person, so this ambiguous 20 to 40-year-old parent, all of the things that you're going to be creating are not going to be as convincing as they should be, and they're going to sound really bland, and it's probably going to end up sounding like what you expect marketing writing to sound, which in the worst case scenarios, and which I see all the time, especially when people don't have a lot of marketing experience and they try to do their own marketing writing, it ends up sounding like those really bad infomercials from like the late night, just like,
Oh,
so
wait, there's more.
so over the top, making these claims that maybe even your product really can do that, but customers expect something different of the type of of their marketing now, and a lot of them are much more savvy, and so they see right through a lot of those big statements and over the top marketing tactics, and instead they want to know the facts. They want to know who you are as a business. They want to know what you stand for, and they want to be able to be excited about telling people, oh yeah, this isn't just, this random product, but yeah, I love this product and I hope that you'll love it also, because you should definitely get it.
Yeah. And I think and just to wrap it up, you're kind of talking about brand consistency. And that's the way I always did it. And I've seen that done a lot, right? So like Amy Weiss and I were talking a couple episodes ago, and she was talking about, even if you're not opening, let's say, a Shopify store to sell through, you should have a brand page, something about your company, about your brand. There's been plenty of times I've gone on Amazon, just to be clear, when I'm buying the things that I look at, like the image and the title, they're usually cheap things, right?
Sure.
Because it's like, whatever, I'll get it. But there has been times if you're selling more expensive items, and expensive is relative. Some people might say $20 expensive. Some might say 50. Some might say 100. So really you got to and that's actually part of knowing your audience, right? Is also, where is that price point? But what you got to do is got to be able to, when somebody searches that brand, your name's coming up. And that reminds me of like Norm Farrar and I, we were talking a lot about owning the front page, we call it, on Google. And it's like, how many times can my brand or my name show up on when somebody Googles either the brand name itself or the keyword that I'm trying to target? And that was one thing I did actually a lot when I had my iPhone business was, I would try to own as much as I could of, let's say, iPhone repair, right? So iPhone repair, I had the YouTube video. I had, that in my name of the business, title. How many articles could I make that had that name in there that weren't, basically spammy, but they provided information. So you want to own a lot of that page. And of course, back in the day, eBay used to spend a lot on Google advertising. Now we see Amazon showing up on Google advertising. So yeah, you're not going to necessarily own every bit of it, but you're going to try to own as much of that page as possible, because you want those clicks. Because even if somebody clicks to a brand page, that's still going to read about you. And then you could always have in there like a link to your Amazon store from your brand page. And then it takes them there and they buy your item, or they want to know more about you after something. If it's something they already bought, they want to know more about the company. And that's branding right there. Emma and I just summed up branding. Boom, show's over. No,
and I think it's something that a lot of sort of newer sellers struggle with, is how much to make their brand the center of what they're doing. Like the title guidelines on Amazon are to put your brand name at the very beginning of your title. And so there's always that question of, should I do that? Shouldn't I do that? And it is definitely, there are a few things to be considering, which is, one, even when you're launching your first product and you just think you need to find a really, really quick brand name, you still want to give some thought to that, because you have to understand that whatever name you choose is going to be associated not just with this product, but with any of the other products that you're creating under that brand. So you don't want to make it some really random, arbitrary, or weird. I've seen the weirdest brand names. And so
doesn't it look like they just typed letters on a keyboard and then they're like, that's it, that's our brand name?
I've seen brand names that I won't name any of them, but even, non-native speakers not understanding how that kind of translates into English and how it may not be reflecting their business in the way that they would like it to be. And so you want to be thoughtful of that. You want to think about how it's coming across. And then regardless, you don't have to make your brand front and center at the beginning, but you also don't want to completely disregard it. So you want to have it there. You want to have it visible so that people understand that who they're buying from, and then you can build on that with time. So it's not that when you're launching your first product, you need to also make sure that you're going full steam and churning out 10 blog posts a week and all of that other stuff. But at the same time, if you're not mindful of that, you could be 3 years down the road, you could have a pretty large product category and have almost no presence outside of Amazon. And so not only does that make your business vulnerable, but it really limits what you're able to do as far as growing your business, growing your community, and all those other things.
Yeah, I mean, when you're thinking of that brand name, you got to think, you think bigger, think, because a lot of times people will start that brand because they're selling one or 1 to 3 items. And they're not really thinking like, bigger, like where could I go with this? Is there going to be more around this sort of area? And, so that brings a good question up. Can small brands still compete against kind of the big brand names out there?
Yeah, on Amazon, there's actually great opportunity for those smaller brands that maybe elsewhere would really not have a fighting chance. So if we're going back to retail, if you see those name brands, it's going to be very difficult to compete against them on shelf space.
Yeah.
But when you come to Amazon or really other places in e-commerce, you see that in general, a lot of those companies that dominated in the like prior generation don't necessarily make that transition very smoothly. And so those businesses that can really understand what you need to do in order to be successful in e-commerce in particular, and they can run lighter and they don't have some of the hefty costs of doing business in retail, they can be more agile. And additionally, even when it comes to your marketing, I feel like some of the worst offenders I see with Amazon listings are the large businesses. And I think what happens is these big, well-known brands, they either assume, okay, well, people are going to see my name, and so they don't really care what's written there. Or two, they have a busy marketing department that's strapped for time. They have too many responsibilities on their plate, and they also don't have the Amazon expertise. And so in either of those situations, even if some of your top competitors are these big, well-known brands, if you know how to really position your product well, then you can compete very strongly against some of those other companies that don't know proper keyword strategy, that don't even fully explain what their products are. I mean, there are times that I see these listings and you don't even really know what the product does. Obviously, it's something like a trash bag. It's fairly straightforward, but maybe even with a trash bag, you have some special anti-rip, anti-stink technology, and it even takes itself out to your curb for you.
Anti-stink.
Well, I mean, they have the scented, but
They
let's be
do.
real. The scented bags just make your trash smell bad.
It masks it slightly.
Perfumed trash, which I don't think anybody is, jumping for joy about.
No.
So if you have that, then, and even the big brands also have that, but they think, okay, well, you saw the commercial about it, so I don't need to reiterate that in my listing. Well,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily true, because also probably a lot of Amazon shoppers have cut the cable and don't even watch commercials, so they're not even receiving that marketing information. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's funny you mentioned that, because it's like, how many of these things that you see these companies just jumping together, right? Like what was it, the Doritos tacos or something? It's like, who thought of that? It's like they're just mashing two things together. But
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious who was thinking of a Doritos taco. Late night munchies seem to have been the driving creative force behind that idea.
Yeah. Well, Jack in the Box ran away with that one. They're doing, was it the whole late night munchie thing? And that was, anyways, we're getting off topic, but yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah. So, so speaking of, how can you stand out from the competition when, let's say, almost everybody's buying pretty much from China, not everybody, but a large majority. And quite a few times people are buying from even the same factory. If not, they're buying from the same region that has a lot of the same products. And how do you kind of like stand out, for somebody when things are kind of identical, when products are identical?
Yeah, so that's really, your marketing may be one of the only tools that you have to actually differentiate yourself. So like what we were speaking about earlier with your packaging, that can play a very big role, but even things like the photos that you take and how you write about your product. And it's not just thinking, okay, well, how can I say this in a different way? It goes back to what we were speaking about earlier about having a very clear idea of who your customer is. And I think it can be really scary for people to say, okay, well, I'm going to narrow down my potential customers to this very specific audience? And won't that just minimize who I can sell to? Won't that just make it so that I'm actually shrinking my sales potential? And that is not the case at all. In fact, time and time again, we see that it's the opposite, because not only will you not look like all of your competitors who are probably writing these very generic things, you are making a very specific argument for a very specific group of people that will then be incredibly excited about the product and the brand in a way that they may not otherwise be. And so even something like a baby product, and just choosing to have more gender neutral colors
Sure.
in everything that you're doing, and making sure that your marketing writing isn't just mom focused. I mean, I see that all the time, where all of the marketing writing is talking about the mother being the primary caretaker. And so that is not true for a lot of families. And it may not even be something that you would think about, but it could be alienating a huge percentage of your customers that don't relate to a family that looks like that. And so being mindful of all of those little details, something so small as not just having it be mother focused, could actually really touch something much deeper with your customers that makes them want to take a photo of their baby with that product and put it on Instagram, and start to really not just be a customer because that was the cheapest or the highest rated, but they want to purchase from your brand because they like what you're doing. And that's just changing one word. That's not even any of those, that's not having to design your product differently. That's not having to invest in elaborate packaging. That's just being mindful of who your customers are and what they care about. And so you have that smaller group. And a lot of times those smaller groups can then become sort of influential in more general purchasing choices. So let's say something like a very gender neutral baby brand. Well, if you start to have some people that are more outspoken starting to talk about your business, then you also start to attract the people that don't necessarily care as much about it, but they want to be purchasing from this brand and this product because that's just what everybody else is purchasing from. So a lot of times those more particular customers actually open the door for the more general customers that just want the hottest product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great information. And that's why you're marketing by Emma. So that's awesome. So let's, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about, what brought you to the point of starting your own business, your own marketing company?
Sure. So it was a little bit of a winding road to get here. I've been in marketing for a long time, but I never really wanted to own my own business. I'm not one of those people that was born knowing that business was my calling. However, I met my husband like 5.5 years ago. And on our second date, he was already telling me that I needed to quit my job. And shortly thereafter began pestering me about trying to put me out there to get projects, because I guess he saw something that I didn't. And I was really resistant to that for quite a while. But fortunately, he's really stubborn. And so he kind of kept pushing. And one day one weekend, I was out of town doing sales and marketing for a company. And I came home and he was like, okay, well, here are all these people that would like to work with us to get help with their marketing writing. And they expect to hear from you on Monday.
Nice.
And so I was a little, I had very mixed feelings about him doing that, but it's so interesting because while I was very resistant to it, once I really understood where he was coming from with all of this, I've actually grown to love not just marketing, which I was already very fond of, but business in general. I think it's such an incredible way to develop yourself personally, to learn, to meet incredible people. Like we got to meet through
Yeah.
being at events together, and it opens so many doors in ways that I feel like I never would have been able to do if I had continued to just be employed at other businesses.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, when I came to work at FeedbackWhiz, I did not expect to be the one doing podcasts and videos. I mean, all my videos up until then were my hands fixing stuff, right? Like how to, so it's like, it definitely is a whole different world when somebody, throws you out there and says, here, go do that. And you're kind of like, I thought about it, but you need just that extra little kick to kind of get out there. So let
Yeah.
everybody know, Emma, what all the services you offer, what kind of, different marketing services do you offer for everybody out there? And this isn't just the Amazon community, but obviously there's plenty of them out there. Tell everybody what you could help them with.
Sure. So we really specialize at Marketing by Emma in helping e-commerce businesses connect with their dream customers through really great writing. And so when that comes to Amazon, that means things like Amazon listing optimization. And then when it comes to off of Amazon, that means things like your website copy, your packaging text, all of those foundational pieces of writing that are going to help you have an impactful interaction with your customers.
Absolutely. And then let everybody know how they get a hold of you, Facebook, a website, anything you'd like to tell them on, so they can listen to this and go, I want her to come help me.
Sure. So you can find us at marketingbyemma.com. We're also on Facebook at Marketing by Emma, if that's a more comfortable platform to communicate on. We also offer free listing analysis, and I will also extend that to free website analysis if you have a landing page or a Shopify store that you'd like us to take a look at. And so if you fill out that form, it's marketingbyemma.com/free analysis. We'll get back to you with some of our observations and things that you may want to consider doing to make sure that you are maximizing your full sales potential with whatever that link may be. And then, some of these things that we spoke about, like getting to know who your dream customer is, that can feel really overwhelming and scary and difficult to even know where to start. And so I actually put together a free download. It's marketingbyemma.com/FW. And that has a lot of questions that you can use to start asking yourself about your business, about your competitors, about your customers, so that whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's writing your Amazon listing, whether it's thinking about your product packaging text, or even planning out the future product launches, you'll have a much clearer direction of where you're trying to go and who you're trying to sell to. So you're not just making arbitrary choices or choosing a product because some tool tells you that that's going to be really popular, and unfortunately everybody else is looking at the same tool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'll make sure to put all those links in the description, and I suggest that you guys go hit up Emma. She offered you a free evaluation. I would take her up on it. And again, thanks for being on the EconWhiz podcast, Emma. I appreciate it.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and for more information, please visit feedbackwhiz.com.